Venezuela's Minister of Communication reveals evidence of opposition corruption and extensive planning for the failed coup attempt. The Ethiopian National Army Chief of Staff killed during the foiled coup over the weekend has been laid to rest. And Saudi Arabia's role in the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi remains under heavy United Nations scrutiny. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is from the South. Venezuela's Minister of Communication has presented new evidence in the case against the opposition and its web of corruption and extensive coup plotting. The minister says the Venezuelan government has in its possession more than 56 hours of video and audio recordings detailing the various actions planned as part of the coup attempt. Government intelligence bodies were present at numerous coup planning meetings. Rodriguez named Colombian President Ivan Duque as a coup promoter and said that plots had clear foreign support. This included planned assassination attempts targeting President Nicolas Maduro, Diosdado Cabello and Freddy Bernal.
We have the operation orders made by these terrorist groups, which had 3 combat groups: Combat Group Sucre, Combat Group Landa, and Combat Group Ulysses. Combat Group Sucre would pursue the capture and assassination of President Nicolas Maduro, the capture and the assassination of the President of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, the capture and assassination of the authority responsible for the state of Táchira, Freddy Bernal, and the taking of the Miraflores Palace. The group denominated as Ulysses were responsible for the capture of the Chief General González López, who was the director of SEBIN, and to provide security to Landa. Later we see that while there is a group called Landa, Landa is also a pseudonym utilized by Mr. Juan Guaidó. Another group named Landa aimed to take the headquarters of the Directorate General of Military Counterintelligence and to act against the FtS of Petare, and to capture the Interior Minister of Popular Power, Néstor Reverol. They would take the Ayala Battalion Park, rob the Bolivar Battalion, take the Carlota military base, overthrow Juan Guaidó, and Baduel was going to self-proclaim himself president of Venezuela from the headquarters of VTV, and from there, he would lead that movement. That's to say that of the 40 candidates for president that the opposition has, according to the infiltrated audios by Mike Pompeo, we have already identified 4: Guaidó, Baduel, Leopoldo López, and Maria Machado. We're missing the other 36, but over the course of the day, we're going to go identifying them one by one. Maybe they're more than 40, Mr. Pompeo.
The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime says Colombia is responsible for 70% of the world's cocaine production. The head of research for the UN office, Angela May, made the announcement as she presented the organization's latest report. She said that although drug seizures in Colombia had increased by 74% in the last decade, production had increased by an alarming 50% between 2008 and 2017. The UN official blamed the spread of criminal gangs in many parts of Colombia as one of the causes. Our correspondent in Bogota, Paola Fernandez, has more.
Alarming figures have been reported by the United Nations in Vienna on drug production in the world. And they are particularly alarming for Colombia because according to their report, it produces 70% of all cocaine, which is distributed across the globe. They say Colombian production has increased sharply in the 10 years from 2008 to reach a total figure of 1.977 tons of cocaine. Obviously, this figure represents a very large number of deaths among drug users. And this comes as the Colombian government says it will restart the spraying of glyphosate, something which has been condemned by many social movements, especially campesino and indigenous organizations. We should remember that the peace agreements with the FARC proposed the substitution of illicit crops, but this hasn't happened. Instead, there has been forced eradication and the militarization of those areas, resulting in an increase in violence, often by criminal gangs fighting over control of the drug routes. Communities have been denouncing this, and they say this is a general problem for the whole economy. But the most badly affected are the coca growers who have no alternative but to plant these crops, while those who make money from the drug business enjoy total impunity.
A Brazilian Air Force officer who was part of President Jair Bolsonaro's committee traveling to the G20 meeting has been caught with 39 kilos of cocaine. Spanish police arrested the man during a stopover in Seville as the delegation headed to Japan for the G20. Bolsonaro, who was on a separate flight via Portugal, said he would instruct his officials to cooperate with the Spanish investigation. Our correspondent in Rio de Janeiro, Andre Vieira, has the details.
It has been confirmed that the Spanish police in Sevilla detained a military officer who served as an aide to President Jair Bolsonaro. The president was traveling from Brazil to Japan for the G20 summit and made a stop over in Spain. It was there that 39 kilograms of cocaine were found in the hand luggage of the aide. The flight that the now detained aide was on set off earlier than President Bolsonaro's plane. The president subsequently changed his flight plans from Spain to Portugal. The reactions have been immediate here, as people are demanding explanations from President Bolsonaro, and are questioning his security. And of course, they are asking how it is even possible that a member of the military and part of his committee was carrying 39 kilograms of cocaine from Brazil to Spain. An investigation has already been opened here into the officer, who remains in custody in Spain.
Shifting gears now, anti-government protests against the government of Juan Orlando Hernandez, as well as violent police repression, are continuing in Honduras. Our correspondent Gilda Silva-Strucci is on the ground.
In the interior, in the department of Comayagua, to be exact, intense military operations are continuing, with military police arriving to restrict the freedom of expression of protesters gathered here who are demanding the right to health and education. The government of Juan Orlando Hernandez is ensuring that the repression continues, with government forces shooting not only at adults, but also at children at different schools across the country. This is the situation here in one of the busiest routes heading to the north of the country, which is where the police and military are coming from.
In Argentina, miners from El Aguilar have marched over 230 kilometers to the provincial capital of Jujuy to call on the local government and the mining company to improve their working conditions.
After a week of protests, more than 600 miners marched from the northern department of Humahuaca to the capital of Jujuy.
I believe miners have had enough of oppression by companies and the government. We've had enough of pressure from powerful economic interests. We've told them that's enough. We were tired of fighting them for so long, but we cannot stand it anymore. And that's why we're staging an indefinite strike and are also marching, just to tell them that miners also deserve dignity.
One of their main demands is for the government to ensure better safety conditions for the workers in the mines. The risks mainly revolve around security, especially in terms of ventilation. The ventilation system doesn't work well. We even had a visit from government technicians who were considerate about the conditions we work in, that there is not enough air inside the mines, and also the emergency escape shafts don't work properly. If there is a collapse on the upper levels, we get trapped down here. The labor minister for the province, Carlos Trejo, insists there are no accidents in the mines, but injured miners think otherwise, and that's why they joined the march.
I was putting in support when a slab fell on me and I couldn't escape.
I'm here because my father was a miner, but he died in an accident inside the mine. After his death, we left the Arger mine, but later I married a miner and came back. My husband also had an accident in the mine and almost lost his life.
The miners are also calling for the removal of the mining company's manager. They have reported him for mistreatment.
We came all the way here to demand that the government also supports us. Thanks to all the miners, they get a lot of money. It is not fair that we are suffering while they enjoy the fruits of our hard work.
After the miners spent the night in the main square of Jujuy, the company finally agreed to remove the general manager and to discuss the miners' other demands.
After the break, Ethiopia's Army Chief of Staff has been buried after being killed by his own bodyguard in Saturday's failed coup. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Ethiopian National Army Chief of Staff, killed during the foiled coup over the weekend, has been laid to rest. Siari Makonnen was killed, or shot and killed rather, by his own bodyguard in Addis Ababa on Saturday when he was trying to avert the coup. Several people attended the burials in Mekele, including regional leaders and military generals. Thousands also joined the mourning by taking to the streets in Ethiopian cities.
Their aim was to kill the elected officials of the Amhara regional state. They infiltrated the defense force so that they could control the federal government in a short space of time. This has failed. Therefore, in the future, if there are others who want to follow in similar fashion, the task of law enforcement will continue.
In Kenya, a member of parliament has been arrested outside the lower house for alleged xenophobic comments. A video has gone viral showing Charles Njagwa saying that Tanzanian, Ugandan and Chinese traders are harassing and taking Kenyan businesses. Njagwa also gave the government a 24-hour ultimatum to have the foreigners deported or risk being beaten up. This has led to a diplomatic row with Tanzania's Prime Minister, who has summoned the Kenyan High Commissioner for an explanation. However, the Kenyan government has distanced itself from the MP. In a statement, the government said it condemned the comments in the strongest terms. It added Kenyans are peace-loving people who have over the years coexisted with others of different nationalities. 7 policemen have been killed in an attack in Egypt. The strike was claimed by the Islamic State armed group and took place in North Sinai near the Police Regional Assembly Center. 4 fighters, including a suicide bomber, also died during clashes following the attack. Later on, the IS group said it carried out simultaneous raids on military positions in El Arish. Egyptian authorities are currently on high alert as the country hosts the Africa Cup of Nations. Palestinians have held more protests in the occupied territories against the U.S. Economic Conference in Bahrain. Thousands marched through the Khan Yunis refugee camp in Gaza, chanting the deal of the century should collapse. The protesters say the economic plan unveiled in Bahrain is an attempt to buy off the Palestinians.
We reject the deal of the century. We will not give away anything of the land of Palestine, all of Palestine. We will not give Jerusalem away, and we will not resettle, and we will not accept an alternative homeland. We will not accept expansion projects that are in the dreams and in the imagination of some people, such as expanding Gaza to Sinai and expanding the West Bank to Jordan, or Jordan to be in control of the West Bank, or Egypt to be in control of Gaza. Palestine is only Palestine.
Palestinian leaders have given a cautious welcome to the announcement by Oman that it would open an embassy in the Palestinian territories. However, Hanan Ashrawi of the PLO warned Oman not to give official recognition to Israel.
Well, we think maybe it will help as, first of all, educating the Omani government as to the real nature of the occupation, and also working with Palestine directly. We told many Arab countries we don't need to go to Manama, to Bahrain, in order to help the Palestinian people with their projects and plans and programs. You can do it directly.
Guyana's Elections Commission chairman has stepped down and handed in his resignation from the position, which the Caribbean Court of Justice found he was holding unconstitutionally. Less than 2 years after he was sworn in, retired Justice James Patterson vacated the position amid mounting public pressure to accept the court's ruling. The CCJ had determined that the process to appoint Patterson was fatally flawed. The president had failed to offer a specific reason for refusing to appoint a chairman from the list submitted by the opposition leader. The court recommended that in future, the opposition and president discuss eligible candidates before a final list is submitted. The UK government's latest travel advisory now reflects a decreased threat of a terrorist attack in Trinidad and Tobago. In the updated information and advice to potential travelers, the UK has removed the phrase "very likely" when it refers to the prospect of a terrorism attack taking place in the Caribbean nation.
I'm also happy to tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago that just yesterday, the UK travel advisory upgraded Trinidad and Tobago and took us off the very likely of terrorist attacks and told us it is because of all of the work that we've done in close proximity with them and the cooperation. So well done, Trinidad and Tobago.
West Indies cricket icon Brian Lara has been discharged from a hospital in India a day after he was admitted with chest pains. Reports state that the 50-year-old from Trinidad and Tobago has been declared fit and fine. Lara, who holds several world records, is considered one of the greatest cricketing batsmen in the world. He has the highest individual score in both first-class cricket and test cricket. Lara is in India as a sport analyst for the official broadcasters of the ongoing Cricket World Cup. After the break, Saudi Arabia remains under fire over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Don't go away. Welcome back. A United Nations expert says Saudi Arabia's investigation into the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi has failed to examine who may have ordered the killing. Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions, Agnes Kalamard, says there is credible evidence to warrant further investigation into Saudi officials' individual liability, including that of the Crown Prince. In her report issued this month, Kalamard called for an international criminal investigation and urged states to widen sanctions to include the Crown Prince and his assets abroad, unless he can prove no responsibility.
The investigation carried out by the Saudi authorities has failed to address the chain of command. It is not only a question of who ordered the killing. Criminal responsibility can be derived from direct or indirect incitement or from the failure to prevent and protect. Establishment of a UN criminal investigation is as essential in order for those central questions to be addressed. State responsibility begs the question as to whom is ultimately liable for his killing. The inquiry was a human rights inquiry, not a criminal investigation. It has nevertheless found credible evidence warranting further investigation of high-level Saudi officials' individual liability, including that of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and of his key advisor, Saud al-Qahtani.
The German Migrant Rescue Sea-Watch ship has entered Italian waters with 42 migrants on board, defying the right-wing government in Rome. The ship's captain decided to head to the island of Lampedusa because the situation on board was more desperate than ever. Sea-Watch is an NGO rescuing migrants as they make the precarious journey from North Africa to Europe across the Mediterranean Sea. NGOs operating in the region are impeded by increasingly reactionary European Union policies designed to prevent migrants entering EU territory. The U.S. Senate has passed a $4.6 billion emergency border aid bill to support migrants arriving through Mexico. This after rejecting a House version of the bill that would impose greater restrictions on migrant detention centers. The House and Senate must now reconcile the two bills or find an alternative solution before Congress leaves for its July 4th recess. Senate Republicans plan to force House Democrats to accept their bill or get nothing done. The Department of Health and Human Services has warned that it could run out of funding to house migrant children by the end of the month.
This situation is child abuse. It is an atrocity that violates every value we have, not only as Americans, but as moral beings. Today, sadly, our values are being undermined by the President's failed policies, which has intensified the situation of heartbreak and horror on the border, which challenges the conscience of America. This legislation is a vote. Today, our legislation is a vote against the cruel attitude toward children of this administration.
A program between Mexico and El Salvador seeks to curb migration flows towards the United States. But migrant rights organizations say this doesn't tackle the deeply rooted problems of poverty and violence in the countries of Central America. Let's take a look.
Successive U.S. administrations have made it a priority to stop the migrants heading towards the United States. One of the latest efforts is the recent agreement signed between Mexico's Andrés Manuel López Obrador and El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, called Harvesting Life, where Mexico will give $30 million to the Central American nation in an effort to create jobs for 30,000 people.
The economic, social and political model in El Salvador doesn't work. It needs to be fixed. We can't continue allowing people to leave in such high numbers. Trump's measure is very radical and inhumane, but it's a serious wake-up call to the governments of the Northern Triangle to resolve the deep structural problems in their economies.
The cooperation in this development plan is meant to boost jobs and productivity for both countries. The planting of 200,000 hectares of forest in Mexico and 50,000 in El Salvador is one measure designed to curb migration to the United States.
We need to give our people, their families, opportunities in their own countries. People migrate due to poverty. This is the most important direct and immediate cooperation program to create well-being and jobs in Mexico and the Republic of El Salvador that these countries have ever had.
The first phase of the agreement was signed with El Salvador, but it is targeted at all of the countries of the Northern Triangle, which also includes Guatemala and Honduras.
The example that Mexico is giving here is the example that needs to be heard by the rest of the world. So, in a humble way, we thank Mexico for its support and we offer our humble support in what we can to support Mexico.
But many Salvadorans are skeptical about the Harvesting Life program. While it creates jobs, it doesn't address other important causes of migration, like gang violence and organized crime, which force people to flee.
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.